The work that I do at Crunchbase, I deal a lot with the venture community to make the private company data very strong within the data set. And I do a lot of gender equity reporting, looking both at women in venture and women in tech. We added gender to the data set 3 years ago because we have a very large data set. It's interesting to hear the anecdotal stories, but then also to see what the numbers tell us. So I'm very excited to be joined by these innovation heads at all of your companies. And I think the first thing that I want to understand is why it's important for all of your firms to be here in the Valley or in America. And, you know, Royal Bank of Scotland is headquartered in Scotland. Orange is headquartered in France. Six Group is headquartered in Switzerland. So you're all very established European companies. So why do you need to be here in the ground? And Moses, I'll ask you first, because I think Orange has been here a while, I think.
Yeah, indeed. And thank you, Janae, for moderating the panel. And thank you, Brett, for having us here. You know, Orange, for those who don't know, is a large global telco headquartered in Paris, France. And we've had operations here in Silicon Valley for about, 18 or 19 years now. So to answer your question succinctly, I think it really has to do being at the centerpiece around innovation and seeing how we as a company can have disproportionate sort of information and relationship advantage as it relates to technologies, entrepreneurs, and thinking about new business models that we can sort of port in collaboration with business units to our colleagues in Europe.
And how big is the team here, Moses?
We have about 45 people here based in San Francisco. And just to quickly jog through our timeline here, again, we started about 18 years ago. And our office back when we started off as a kind of a patent writing shop. So you can imagine we hired a bunch of technical folks to essentially kind of go heads down and write and generate patents. We evolved after several years of doing that into more of a product development innovation center where we would essentially task folks to incubate an idea, come up with sort of an MVP, and find a business unit or a functional area to commercialize that. And
when was that about that you?
That was probably in the sort of early 2000s, okay. Early to mid 2000s. And I want to say over the past roughly, let's say 10 years or so, we've kind of evolved into kind of this open innovation approach where we do work with startups. We still have a legacy office that is highly technical, but we've brought on folks like myself who I spent 10 years in financial services and sort of lead our financial services vertical on innovation for our office. So it's been kind of an interesting evolution of our office here in the Valley.
Yeah, and from what I understand, Moses, in talking to you, is that I feel like as a firm, you're very product and research driven at this stage. But we can talk more about that. So going on, Sam, do you want to talk about your efforts here in the US and what Six Group is doing in the US?
Sure. I mean, let me tell you who we are first. Six Group is a very large Swiss company based in Zurich. It's owned by about 137 banks. We have two businesses. We have the Swiss business and the international business. The Swiss business runs the Swiss Stock Exchange. It runs payments, or ATM networks or credit card machines in Switzerland and other European countries. We have an innovation and digital business and then a data business. The data business is really the international business. So we've been out here in California a long time. I mean, it's probably 30 years we've been in the States and in California, but really the innovation side has really developed over the last 3 years when I moved across from London to really lead it from here. And it's really been driven by 2008, obviously, the crash, and then the reputational risk from that. Or the reputational damage, I should say, from that. And it's also being led by regulations, the increasing burden of regulations, that we have to find new ways for our shareholders to manage and report on these regulations. And also, it's a huge cost to them. So we're looking at new technologies in order to find the efficiencies and really drive down the costs. And the last thing is really fear of missing out. As I've learned from corporate innovation, that's a real big driver, and so you've got to be involved. And here, having been here for 3 years, everything really starts here. Mm-hmm. And I kind of manage our ecosystem between kind of San Francisco and New York, and really it starts here. and then sort of goes to New York, then goes to London, then goes to Switzerland, then goes to Singapore.
Got it.
That's what I'm learning.
And how big is the team out here? Because I know you have a big New York. New York.
Yeah, actually, it's me. The team is me. A one-man army here.
Okay.
Everyone else is in New York.
In New York for the data, and there's about 100 people in New York for the data business.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. And so, why 3 years ago? Besides the financial crash, what was the real pivot for your coming out? You're coming out and being based here.
Yeah, I mean, it was really that I was managing our kind of fintech ecosystem in London and in Israel before this, but they really needed someone here to drive the Silicon Valley scene forward and really channel things through to Switzerland. And so I got the opportunity to do that, which I grabbed with both hands.
Okay.
And moved here.
Wonderful. And Neil, over to you with the Royal Bank of Scotland. How long has the Royal Bank of Scotland been in the Valley?
So we pulled in an executive committee director from Standard Chartered Bank in about 2012. He'd set up their innovation outpost in San Francisco about 2010. He came in with a recommendation that RBS should have an outpost in Silicon Valley, so we established one in probably 2014. There's only ever been between 2 and 4 of us here, but we have 60 people within RBS concentrating solely on innovation. So RBS, after the financial crisis, was bailed out by the government. We, at the time, had just taken over a chunk of ABN AMRO, and we were in excess of 200,000 employees. We're now more like 60,000 employees. Our customer base is being eaten away by challenger banks in the UK, the Starlings, the Monzos, the Revoluts, people like that. And even though they've only established themselves in the last 2 or 3 years, we recognized before that there were innovations in payments and in other aspects of banking that would start to eat our revenue and our customer base. So we came over here really to scout for companies that we thought we could partner with who would help us to improve the services that we offer to our customers. So that might be bolting on a digital front end to an existing paperwork process, or some other smoothing of the customer journey. Maybe it's in mortgages, maybe it's in other aspects of banking that basically puts us in good stead with our customers, given the other banks that are kicking off or also doing similar things in the UK.
Got it. And you're a couple of people here in the Valley.
Right now, 2. The third person got their visa from the embassy yesterday, so they'll be out here soon. We've only ever been 4 maximum. But we only do scouting, so we work with the venture capital companies, we find the companies that we think we want to partner with. Aside from that, we also look for executive education out here. So we partner with Stanford and Singularity University to put our executives through their programs so that the entire bank changes its culture from a sort of inward-facing, sort of issues-led, crisis-reactive bank more to an outward-facing, customer-centric bank.
Got it. And Neil, I want to follow up with you there because the next area is really about your firms and you're the innovation officers and how your firms work through innovation or are focused on it, how you structure innovation. And I think your story at the Royal Bank of Scotland is very interested in how, as a company, you've incorporated innovation from the CEO down. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it might be unique. Every bank that we meet says that they don't do this. So I'll tell you what we do. As we brought in, the gentleman's name is Simon McNamara, who's our head of services. He came from Standard Chartered. He convinced our CEO that innovation was critical to the success of RBS going forward. And so between them, they created an innovation forum that runs every month. The only people who are invited to it are the CEOs of our customer-facing businesses, our head of services, Simon, and our CEO of the overall bank. Every month they go off-site, they discuss all of the issues, whether they be customer related, whether they be internal, that we think we should be focusing on from an innovation perspective. They prioritize up that list, which is generally about 40 or 50 rolling issues. As they get solved, they fall off, and as new ones are identified or prioritize themselves, they come onto this list. And that effectively is the action list that the innovation area concentrates on at any point in time. So I know what I need to work on, which problems within the bank I need to find solutions for, because this list is managed right at the top of the bank, is visible at the top of the bank. And if you need money to solve a problem that can be solved using innovation, you go to them, and they have a fund of about 250 million sterling from which they can draw down for individual projects.
So the chart is set from it's core to the company, it's monthly, it's set from the top head. So how does that conversation filter to your innovation group? Because you're out there in the marketplace sort of leading on.
Yep. So we have a director of innovation who works for Simon. His name's Kevin Hanley. He effectively distributes all of the output from the meeting, both from a verbal perspective and from a minutes perspective, so that we understand what the conversation was like and which projects are the next priorities, and that's how we decide what we're going to work on. And not only do I work on it here, but we scout in the UK and Europe, we scout in Israel and the rest of the world, so Hong Kong, Singapore and other places, without necessarily having a physical presence there. We tend to do it through partnership.
Yeah.
So that's how we manage it.
Okay. So Six Group, Sam, is very different. What is Six Group's approach to innovation? How do you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's great to hear Neil talk about their model. There are a number of innovation models that you can apply, and that some of our clients apply. We operate probably 3 or 4 different models. So we have our own innovation and digital business. That's for internal group innovation across the different business units, where it's staff that have the ideas, that want to take their ideas through to new products or services. We then run an incubator, so that's external tech companies, and we'll look at any stage. We don't care about monetization because we'll figure out a way for them to make money. We just care about the people and the technology, and they've got to solve a problem. If they solve a problem and they properly that is really affecting our customers, then they're welcome to join.
And that's based in Europe, the incubator?
It doesn't have to be. The incubator is in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And but the companies don't need to be there. We have applications from about 55 different countries.
Wow.
So it's a big program purely because of our shareholder base. So that is looking at tech companies internally. We then have a VC fund for acquisition or for investment, and then we partner with the labs out here in California. So that's bank innovation labs, incubators, certainly to see deal flow and certainly to see companies that could potentially participate in our program, or technologies that we can use for our customers. So there's probably 4 models that we use.
Got it. And from talking to you, what I understand is Six Group does a lot within the Fintech startup ecosystem. Is that correct?
We do. We certainly do. But it's really concentrated between California and New York.
Okay.
So that's really where we partner with labs and incubators and sandboxes, and say, because we see a lot of tech firms and they've got these great algorithms, but the data that they're using is scraped from somewhere, it was unstructured. There's no real value in the data, but they're asking their customers to make really high quality decisions based on crappy data. So we give our data away for free, very high quality, very expensive data that banks pay millions of dollars for, like Neil's bank. And we give it away for free to these incubators and say, use our data, build your products. We give it to the banks too and say, innovate off our data, and then make these products really valuable.
And then they come back and buy from you one day when they.
We hope so.
When they're reliable. Yeah. Okay. And can I say you support Yahoo Finance and Google Finance?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So Google Finance, if you go to Google Finance and look at a share price, it comes from us.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. And I have to tell you, Crunchbase has a little announcement which just got announced today that we've been incorporated into Yahoo Finance for all private company information. So Yahoo found that whenever someone entered a private company like Airbnb, they had no result because they're not in the public markets. And so we, just as of this morning, are now powering that within Yahoo, which we're pretty excited about. Okay. So going on to Orange. So Orange is, you're a telco. I think you have 256 million.
265 million customers. We're in over 200 countries. We throw off about 48 billion US on the top line. So large, infrastructure intensive, capital intensive business. And I was just kind of reflecting a little bit about, if someone were to ask, how do you approach innovation at such a large company? It's a really tough question to answer. But what I will say is, at the very top, About 5 years ago, our CEO, Stéphane Richard, set out a vision of what the next, I think is called Essentials 2020. What does the roadmap look like for innovation for the company? And one of the things that he talked about very distinctively was, how do you build new businesses to grow top line for a company that has legacy infrastructure, that has a strong brand, distribution, et cetera, assets that it could work with? And I'll talk a little bit about what some of the big things we've done, but also maybe some of the programmatic things that we've done as well. But I think the big thing I want to just convey to the audience is that as a global telco, we now operate a bank in France. So we're the only global telco, from what I understand, that operates a regulated bank. So if you go to France, you can open up an Orange Bank account. But that builds off of a legacy of innovation. So about 10 years ago, we launched a mobile money business in Africa. About 6 or 7 years ago, we launched a contactless NFC-enabled payment solution called Orange Cash. And Orange Bank is really an evolution of a series of bets that we've been able to make as a company that have pushed a telco into financial services. And what I could say publicly is that our bank will be expanding into Spain over the next 12 months or so. So at a very high level.
Yeah, carry on. Yeah, I was just going to say, what's different about Orange's bank compared to other retail banks within Europe?
Yeah, good question. So there are, of course, competitors in the retail banking industry in France and some very strong banking brands. I think what we differentiate ourselves a little bit with is, one is, if you think about customer journey, kids these days get smartphones at the age of, let's say, 12 or 13. So their first point of contact with Orange in the brand will be with their smartphone. And when they turn legal age to open up a bank account, our hope is that sort of our NPS score is strong enough that that brand and that association of a very stable, accessible device and wireless connectivity will then translate into the banking side. We do think that the Orange brand in general has a very strong NPS, and we've seen results where we have over 200,000 account openings over the past 6 months or so. And we've launched a savings solution, a checking account, payment solution, and unsecured consumer lending.
Got it. And so you're appealing to the millennial market in France, or not so much?
Millennial and also existing consumers. What's interesting is that we do have, I think, 140 or so retail branches. So you can go in, similar to going to a Verizon or T-Mobile store, you can go in now into an Orange retail outlet and talk to a salesperson who is a licensed salesperson who can talk about the Orange brand. So we have also partnered with IBM Watson on voice-enabled solutions. So we think that the market in France is very unique because there are even older generations who are looking for solutions that are more digitally enabled, but that also give them accessibility through a branch network, which is not a traditional banking branch, but leveraging the Orange brand.
Got it. So moving on, I'd love to hear from you, Sam. So I'm thinking about how, in leading innovation, I'd love to know a kind of product or something you've created internally that has resulted from the work that you do, the work that the innovation group does that has impacted Six Group.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's let me take one step back. We used to just run hackathons, right? Hackathons as a way of innovating.
Yeah.
And actually, the hackathon model has really changed over the last 3 years, as have innovation models. And now, in that we run our hackathons are very focused. They're about solving a particular problem. If you solve that problem, then you could be successful from the hackathon. So,
is everyone solving the same problem, or there's?
Yes, yeah. They're all trying to solve the same problem.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we've had two payments companies come through hackathon models. One's called Payment and one's called Twin. Mm-hmm. They are now if everyone knows Venmo, they are the Venmos of Switzerland. So they're the two biggest networks in Switzerland. They both came through our incubator. And then we have another one coming through called TaxCube. TaxCube is a product for retail advisors that allows retail advisors to look at a client's holdings in many different countries and optimize the holdings for the lowest tax payment. So that's a really interesting product because nothing like that exists. And that was something that came from a customer and said, look, can you help us solve this problem? And we've dealt with it using a hackathon and our incubator.
Got it. Okay.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And Neil, for you, how has the innovation group impacted, or the work that you've done impacted RBS?
Yeah, I'll give you a very simple and a much, much more complex, but I'll try and keep it simple, answer. So you're probably aware that bank branches are tending to close because people don't visit them. That may not be the case in cities, but in more rural areas, you get very few visitors. And so we are trying to adapt to that and make it simple for our customers to get in touch with us. And we found that video is one of the best ways of doing it, but video can be quite infrastructure heavy. So we partnered with a company here in San Francisco called TalkBox. Until recently, they were part of Telefonica. I think they were recently sold to Vonage. But they enable us and our customers via a simple email link to open up a private and recordable video chat channel. So you can have an appointment if you're a wealth customer, for example, with your wealth advisor over video just on your iPad. You can do the same if you're applying for a mortgage, and you can walk through the paperwork via the video link. So that's a pretty simple thing to do, but it means that people don't have to go to a branch or don't have to arrange an appointment with somebody to meet physically, wherever they may be.
And it means they can get more immediate answers if they're pressing. They don't have to wait 3 weeks till someone's in.
And an advisor can fit in many more customers in a day, doing it that way without all the travel involved in it. So that's quite an efficient thing that we've done. On the more complex side, we made an investment a few years ago in a quantum computing software company called 1Qubit. Mm-hmm. They're based up in Vancouver. I was in the UK for the past 3 weeks, and a few weeks ago we did what we call a code spike, sort of a hackathon type thing, but only with 1Qubit to solve a portfolio optimization problem that you can't today solve with conventional computing. So what today takes us 2 weeks to run, to optimize a regulatory portfolio, so something that the public can see, we can now do in 15 seconds. So we can run it as often as we want. We can do it every day. We can tweak the portfolio to maximize the return that we get from it, but using a completely different computing power than what you would normally find in a data center.
And you're running that for a fund, or for?
It's a regulatory fund that we have to hold.
Got it.
Yeah, our high quality liquid assets portfolio, as it's called. Yeah.
Okay. And Moses, on your side, I mean, obviously you've talked about mobile money and, France. I want to say Orange using, it's almost the Amazon model, is using what you have in your platform to then move into new areas which sort of fit in. So how else do you see the work that you've been doing out here, the lab's been doing out here for a long time, impacting?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll just go very briefly in terms of some of the programmatic things. Of course, we do research on emerging tech and new business models. 2 is we work on product innovation, so we do POCs, pilots, partnerships. And then lastly, we do early stage investing through an effort we launched about 3 years ago called Unbank.Ventures, which is our corporate VC arm that we co-manage here and with our colleagues in Paris. But with that being said, we also had an on-prem accelerator in our office called Orange Fab. So globally, that's now expanded to, I want to say, 6 or 7 countries. Where we host incubator and accelerator models in our offices. Interestingly, I think one of the things that we worked on, I've been with the company for about a year, one of the first products that we helped bring to market was in the digital wealth management space. So again, think of take your hat and say, okay, telco, we do have a large enterprise business called Orange Business Services. What are the other value-added products that we can sort of cross-sell our customers into? And one of those that we saw in the market clearly was kind of in the wealth management space, where we saw that B2C wealth managers were really having a tough time aggregating enough assets to justify their businesses. And so, interesting, just coincidentally, we ended up working in our office in partnership with our enterprise business called Orange Business Services. To launch essentially a white-labeled robo-advisor digital finance solution. So what that enables us to do is go to our clients who are you can think of an asset manager in Asia where, the amount of wealth accumulation is increasing at a very steady clip, where we can essentially sell to them and say, hey, look, you don't need to buy, you don't need to build, you can license a robo-advisor solution from Orange, and that comes with all of the backing of a large global telco. But by the way, we're partnering with a third party that happens to be a Zurich-based digital finance solution called Additive. So please feel to check that out, and we would love to, So that's just another example of one of the things that we've done in our office recently.
Got it, okay. So we're getting to the end of our time, and there is some time for audience questions. So I'd like to open it up to the floor if you have any questions you would like to ask Moses, Sam, or Neil here on the stage. I have a couple more, but I'd like to make sure some of you can raise your voices.
So while this is on fintech innovation, and fintech actually is the backbone of many applications, I was just wondering, from your perspective, is there any interest directing fintech innovation into the healthcare space?
Are any of you involved in a crossover into healthcare?
No. But do you mean, could you give us more detail on the question? How would you apply fintech into healthcare?
Because when you look at payments,
right.
Fintech in every, and when you refer to data, as you can see, the health data is the new currency.
Oh, for sure.
And every single tech giant wants to get into it. And the banks also think about, okay, how can they link up the whole thing so that their payment systems can be the WeChat Pay or the Alipay. So I was just wondering if you have any, insights into how any interest from your companies that look into tying that up, channeling fintech innovation into that industry or even different industries, because payments, you need the cash flow, you want to keep that under your belt.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a relevant question. I can't answer the detail that you're probably looking for, but I think I can answer it another way, which is obviously that data is, all of our companies generate data, and the data is quickly becoming the most valuable asset that we have, and we've only ever been in the data business for 87 years. And if you look at, I was talking to a chap at lunch. We're talking about the Nest platform, but actually the valuable piece of that is all the data that it generates. Same with the Alexa device, the little speaker that sits in your house that's listening to everything you say. It's the value of the data there. And healthcare has huge amounts of data. InsurTech is leveraging that to provide much lower cost insurance premiums based on much more accurate data from unstructured sources. So huge value, relevant question. That's what I would say.
Moses?
So just one example of something we've done, and I know that we've had a healthcare vertical that one of my colleagues can speak to if we want to chat a little bit afterwards. But one of the things that we've done, again, thinking about our brand, our distribution, is how do we provide other value-add services? So in Africa, in Ivory Coast in specific, we've been working with a startup that's backed by a reinsurer. And we're essentially, through our mobile money network, we're now offering life insurance products to consumers, right? So that's just another example of us kind of using our distribution and our rails to think about like health insurance. And I think like the broad thesis for us is like, hey, if people are healthier, living longer, and connected to our network, for us, like that increases ARPU for us and hopefully lowers churn. And so we want more connectivity, more engagement with consumers. And I think healthcare is a very, obvious place to play for us.
Okay. Any other questions from the floor? I'm going to dive in if there isn't, which is, so finally, one thing I'd like to, just because it's top of mind for everybody, is given that you're in the banking space, all of you, is cryptocurrency. How do you see cryptocurrency? How is your firm engaging with cryptocurrency? And whoever wants to kick off can go.
So I can say one thing, because I think it's actually pretty exciting. So Our office was probably the first, office within the company of 150,000 people to sort of raise the flag and say, hey, Bitcoin, crypto is something that's happening in the Valley. We should be made aware of this. And to make a much longer story shorter, we have probably in the company 50 or so different discrete projects related to distributed ledger technology. And one that I can talk about at a very high level is we're working on with our treasury team actually a solution to help make the commercial paper market more efficient in France. So currently, and this is actually very interesting, right? So telco treasury team helping create a new solution in the capital markets. So in France currently, if a company wants to issue CP, it takes let's say it's a T plus 5 or 6 day settlement, right? So it takes, the company says, I want to issue commercial paper, which is essentially short-term debt. And it takes several days for the investors and for the company to reconcile and settle the cash versus the commercial paper. And so what we've done through really our treasury team has championed this idea, but again, it kind of builds off of the halo of us kind of waving the sort of the crypto distributed ledger technology mantra is that they're leveraging a third party to help them on the settlement. So we're bringing that T plus whatever that number is to 0. So you can imagine an issuer goes out to market and says, hey, I want to raise commercial paper and I want to settle it same day. And that's a solution, that's something that we're working on, and that'll be live in 2019. It's called, I think it's Now CP.
Okay.
I would answer it in 2 ways. I mean, I would separate crypto and digital. So I think crypto will drop the crypto and it will just be digital. But the Swiss love cryptocurrencies because they love any way of hiding money. So we have Crypto Alley in Switzerland, and you can go to a train station and change your Swiss franc to Bitcoin. It will transfer it straight into your wallet. You can pay your taxes in Bitcoin should you wish. But on a more serious level, we just announced maybe 4 weeks ago that we're launching the Swiss Digital Exchange. So that launches in 2019. So it's the first regulated digital asset exchange. We're not going to be doing cryptocurrencies just purely because they're not an institutional ready investment yet. They offer hedge funds certainly because of the volatility and the unregulated nature, but not for banks. So what a digital asset exchange is, we'll be taking existing assets, so equities, debts, warrants, structured products, and tokenizing them. So then you could trade them on a digital asset platform that's fully regulated, and we do the whole process, so execution, clearing, settlement, custody, payment custody. So that whole process will be online, and we're launching that next year. So we're going to be the first digital asset exchange.
Okay. Neil?
So, we have to separate, I think, the cryptocurrencies from the blockchain technology. We have no appetite to trade in or bank people's cryptocurrencies. We believe, as a large institutional bank in the UK, that there's too much reputational risk in it. It's, from our point of view right now, too volatile from an investment perspective to do it, and we don't want to be associated with people losing a load of money. If they do, and if they make a load of money, well, that's great, but we still won't be associated with it. From a blockchain perspective, though, we are very interested, and we've developed some solutions on blockchain for our own use and for broader use across the banking community. I think a lot of banks are looking at cross-border payments from a blockchain perspective, just to simplify the supply chain of money between countries. So we are looking at that because we're part of the R3 consortium. We have an Irish brand called Ulster Bank, and you may not know the technicalities of this, but the south of Ireland is euro denominated and has to clear its banking services through Brussels. That's an incredibly slow process compared to the rest of the UK, which clears in sterling through London. And London is a much more international and much better connected currency market than Brussels is. So we've developed a clearing system on blockchain for Ireland, but the problem is that because we developed it and the other banks in Ireland weren't associated with it, they won't use it because we built it. But if we could get them interested in it, then it's a backup system in case the Brussels system fell over for whatever reason.
Got it.
So.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming, and thanks to Sam, Moses, and Neil for this panel.
Thank you.